We have lots to discuss here in today's video, including lots of offseason trade speculation, including a handful of teams we're looking at today, including Montreal, Vancouver, as well as a potential big trade between Calgary and Dallas. Both sides definitely have mutual interest to possibly get a deal done. We'll discuss how that could possibly play out. Plus, Hockey Canada announced today that they're holding an orientation camp ahead of the 2026 Olympic Games being held in Italy, inviting over 40 NHL players on the men's side to take part in this camp to be considered for the upcoming team. We'll discuss who all was invited and what that team could look like. Plus, we have some signings today, including Alex Laferriere. Plus, we have also an update on the arbitration case between the Toronto Maple Leafs and Nick Robertson. A lot more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video. Certainly a very interesting news day. We've got some signings, an Arb case, as well as big news from Hockey Canada and some trade talk as well. So the first thing I want to start with is our big signing of the day was the LA Kings coming to terms with a restricted free agent forward, Alex Laferriere. He gets a 3-year contract at $4.1 million. He will still be a restricted free agent upon expiration of that deal. He'll be 1 year away from UFA status. So obviously Laferriere has been a pretty good player for the Kings the past couple of seasons. Certainly has continued to grow and become a part of that core forward group. So this is a pretty good deal overall. For what Laferriere brings, I don't see a ton of risk with this contract. Obviously, they've taken lots of time to discuss and get everything sorted out here. So Laferriere, $4.1 million, will be under contract for the next 3 years with the Los Angeles Kings. Another potential signing that hasn't happened yet, but we know one of the UFA is still looking for work around the NHL as veteran Jimmy Vesey remains unsigned, and there is an update on some reports today indicating that he is considering going to the KHL. Apparently, he does have options to play over in that league next season, and with the lack of options presenting themselves for the NHL for the coming year, there is a possibility we could see him play over in Russia next year. So we'll see where things go on that front. And of course, as I mentioned, the arbitration hearing between the Toronto Maple Leafs and forward Nick Robertson is getting close. It's to be held on August the 3rd, so usually 48 hours ahead. Each team has to submit their contract numbers for comparables that they're looking to for their side of the equation here on the contract. So that happened today. The Toronto Maple Leafs themselves as a team submitted their offer of $1.2 million, whereas Nick Robertson's camp is looking for $2.25 million. So that's just over $1 million apart. Now, I'll keep you just a reminder here. This is very strategic. So when we hear these Arb cases and we hear what each side has submitted, it doesn't really mean a lot. I think both sides expect to be somewhere in the middle. Obviously, they'd prefer to be closer to their number than the other side, but oftentimes it's usually a meet in the middle type of situation that resolves these things as well. If you look at AFP Analytics, which is my go-to resource for contract projections, they projected a 2-year contract for Nick Robertson around $1.5 to $1.6 million. So that's not quite in the middle. It's a little closer to what the Leafs are offering, but it's not far off. So obviously, if you look at, the middle ground's probably more like 1.7, 1.75, but it's not far off at all. So in all likelihood, probably see something in that 1.6 range or so. But we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, the Leafs and Robertson's camp can continue to negotiate right up until the hearing begins on August 3rd, which would be on Sunday. So we will see how this goes. I'm sure both sides would probably prefer not to have that happen, but if they're having too much of a tough time coming to terms, that is what it's there for. Of course, the last couple of seasons saw Robertson's production be pretty decent. He scored 14 goals 2 years ago. He followed that up with 15 goals last year. And of course, as we know, Robertson doesn't get a ton of minutes, and he quite often sometimes is one of the first players to be pulled from the lineup when they want to make changes. So, given all the inconsistencies of where he plays, how much he plays, being in and out of the lineup, like his production has been pretty decent for what he's been able to get for opportunity. So, really for the contract he's looking for, this should be easier said than done, in all honesty. I do wonder, though, from the Leafs' perspective, the other part that they could have been pushing for on Robertson's side of things is probably more than a one-year deal. It's probably, I would suspect, more than about just money on the other side of it. So the Leafs are probably concerned because obviously they've even though he's put up 14, 15 goals the past couple of years, I think it's fair to say that the Maple Leafs still have long-term concerns on where he fits. And I think they're reluctant to get into any kind of longer-term contract. So I think they probably would prefer to keep it a one-year deal like they did last time. He probably wants a little bit more job security, thinking I've hit 15 goals, 14 goals the last couple of years. I deserve more than a year. And maybe he's got a case there, and that's what arbitration is for. But we'll have to wait and see where it goes. But I would hope that sometime tomorrow or early Sunday morning before this gets underway, that the team and the player come to terms, meet in the middle, sign a 1 or 2 year deal around 1.6 or 1.65 or something along those lines. Now, there was also another signing today, which was reported by Puckpedia, which I believe seems to be accurate here. Puckpedia is usually a pretty good resource, but I don't know that the team announced it. But the Anaheim Ducks have signed a restricted free agent left winger Tim Washi. He was signed as a undrafted college free agent towards the end of last season. So in the spring, after completing his year at Western Michigan, of course they had a big season there. He signed a 1 year contract, which was burned by the end of the season, so became an RFA. So he gets a 2 year contract. Year one is still a two-way deal where he gets league minimum at the NHL, $175 at the American Hockey League level. Then year two is supposed to be a one-way deal valued at $850. So we'll see where that goes. I believe there was unconfirmed reports earlier today that they had signed Sam Galangelo as well, but then that reportedly was not accurate or not official yet. So we'll see what we can find out on that here in the next little bit. Of course, as I mentioned, Hockey Canada made a big announcement today. They're going to be launching a orientation camp later in August to prepare for the 2026 Winter Olympic Games, inviting over 40-plus NHL players to participate and be considered for the upcoming Olympic team. Now, I do believe Team USA and probably other countries as well, but I know USA Hockey is expected to be holding pretty much exact same type of event, and we'll be announcing their rosters. I'm not sure when. I would suspect here sometime soon, probably over the weekend. Hockey Canada's camp is August 26th to the 28th in Calgary, Alberta. As I mentioned, over 40 players. I did do a video earlier tonight, kind of running down a little bit more time here, spending on all the players, but we'll kind of do a quick run through here right now. In goal, it's the same three goaltenders that were partaking on the Four Nation Cup team: Jordan Binnington, Samuel Montembeault, and Aiden Hill. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't invite an extra one or two goalies beyond that, just to have a little bit more competition in the mix here, especially Logan Thompson. I don't know what this guy needs to do to get on the radar. There was some reports around Four Nations time that because he has two former head coaches on the coaching staff, and Bruce Cassidy and Pete DeBoer both coached him in Vegas, and of course now he's in Washington, and that they didn't want him on the team. That's what the rumor was. I don't know if that was ever confirmed, probably not, but that was the speculation around him. Darcy Kemper's another one I thought was interesting, considering the year he had in LA last year, that he didn't even get an invite. But that's where things are at with Hockey Canada and goaltending. I'm not shocked that they're going to probably give Jordan Binnington every opportunity to be the starter again after helping them win the last tournament. But you would think that just, considering the seasons those guys put up, just from a respect standpoint, that they would kind of have them there and in the mix at the very least, even if they really felt like the other three goalies were the better choice. I don't know. It's interesting. Pretty much everybody on the Four Nation team is going to be at this camp and more as well. Of course, it's a bigger group. On defense, this is alphabetical here. We've got Evan Bouchard, Noah Dobson, Drew Doughty, Aaron Ekblad, Thomas Harley, Cale Makar, Brendan Montour, Josh Morrissey, Colton Parayko, Travis Sanheim, Shea Theodore, Devon Taves, and Mackenzie Weegar. So a good group of defensemen. The only omission, in my opinion, that I would have maybe thrown in would have been maybe Thomas Chabot. But again, I'm not saying he gets screwed or anything like that. But to me, he was comparable last year to guys like Uyghur, Montour, even Sanheim to a degree. I thought Chabot had one of his best seasons he had in a long time. He does have history with Hockey Canada, but ultimately they've got a lot of great defensemen there to pick from. So I don't think that's really a slight to Chabot. It just goes to show how stiff the competition is. At forward, we're going to get a good mix of the old generation and the new generation, which I think is fantastic to see. Alphabetically here, we have Connor Bedard, which is good to see. Sam Bennett, Quentin Byfield, of course, another young player. Macklin Celebrini, Anthony Cirelli, of course, who was on the team last time. Crosby, Brandon Hagel, Bo Horvat from the Islanders, of course, he's a new addition here. Zach Hyman, a new addition. Seth Jarvis, Wyatt Johnson, another young player, part of the next generation of Canadian hockey. Travis Konechny from Philly, who, of course, was on the team at Four Nations. Nate McKinnon and Brad Marchand. Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid. No big surprises there. They were all on the team last time. A bunch of these guys were confirmed already as the first six players named anyway. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins from Edmonton was an interesting one. Didn't expect him to make this list, but he is there. Braden Point, of course, and Sam Reinhart, both are on the team already. Mark Scheifele from Winnipeg. I think Scheifele was probably the out of all the players who missed out on being on the Four Nation team, I think he was probably the last cut. It would have been the first call for injury replacement if they needed it to, and it never came to be. Mark Stone, of course, was on the team before. Montreal captain Nick Suzuki and Toronto captain John Tavares, who missed out on the Four Nation tournament, were both invited here. Robert Thomas of St. Louis. Carter Verhaeghe, who maybe didn't have the greatest season last year, but always is clutch, has been the last few years, is so clutch in the playoffs for Florida. Absolutely just a sniper when it matters most. Got an invite, which is nice to see. And Tom Wilson, and I fully suspect Wilson to have a good chance to be on this team. A lot of people think he's there just to be the big deterrent, if you will, the big side of beef, if you will, to kind of throw off the other teams and provide physical play. But this guy's got some skill too. I mean, I know Wilson has at times earlier in his career been a bit of a goon, done some stupid stuff, but in all honesty, he's played a much more mature game in recent years, has a 30-goal campaign under his belt, and he can play. So I would not be surprised, honestly, if we see a little bit of the younger generation on this team. I would probably give an edge to Macklin Celebrini. I think he might be the most complete player. When you look at Celebrini, Bedard, Byfield, Wyatt Johnston, they're probably they're the youngest players that have the least amount of NHL experience on this forward group here. I would probably give an edge to Celebrini. Wyatt Johnston's a pretty good all-around player too. Bedard has been doing a lot of work, and these guys are all going to play big roles likely for Canada down the road. So it'd be nice to get some of them some experience with this tournament. So I'll be curious to see how things kind of play out there. As far as if you look at the highest scoring forwards that have could play for Canada that missed out, you're looking at guys like Matt Duchene, Dylan Strome, Jordan Kyrou, even Nazem Kadri. They're all kind of left out here, but you know what? It's a tough group of forwards that they'd have a hard time making the team, I would think. But they're players that just as easily could have been invited to the selection camp as some of the other guys on this list. So interesting. Nonetheless, Team Canada, we know, will definitely have a very strong team. Whether or not they win will be a whole other story. It's going to be a very competitive and interesting yet fun tournament. Very curious to see the American list. All we've heard about the American team was Montreal reporter Tony Marinaro has reported that he has it on good authority that Habs defenseman Lane Hudson was not invited to the USA camp, but that's all we've heard so far about that, and I suspect that we'll hear more on the USA Hockey's roster over the weekend. At least that's my educated guess here. Now on to some trade talk around the NHL. As I mentioned, could we see a trade between the Dallas Stars and the Calgary Flames? We've touched on this before, and according to NHL insider Frank Saravalli, there's a pretty good chance that both of these teams are interested in looking at this further, and he does see value that this could be something that actually does happen. We know that Rasmus Andersson is a player, like Jason Robertson, are both entering the final year of their contracts. Now, Robertson is not UFA yet. He still has a little bit of RFA time left, whereas Andersson is UFA, a little bit older player. So Andersson, we know, is likely, if he starts the year in Calgary, is not going to likely finish the year in Calgary. He is has limited amount of time left as a Flame. I think that's definitely more than fair to say that. If for any reason he rides things out, I say he leaves as a UFA next year, and I don't see Craig Conroy letting that happen. So we know that he's either going to be traded before the season starts, or he could be one of the bigger pieces moved at the NHL trade deadline. Of course, we know the Dallas Stars and Vegas are the main two teams we've heard that Rasmus Andersson, if he were traded either before or during the season, that he would be interested in signing a contract extension with. So that might be better for Calgary to get a better return if he signs with the team he goes to. And then, of course, gives them, like I said, a better return, and it allows them just to make a better hockey trade. So Andersson, like I said, Dallas and Vegas are the main teams. The Dallas Stars have the same sort of predicament here with Jason Robertson. We know the Dallas Stars definitely would like to add a top 4 right-hand defenseman. That is clear as day based on their roster needs. That's something they want to do. Jason Robertson is an interesting player, especially after adding Mikko Rantanen. The belief is they definitely would not want to pay Robertson more than Rantanen. But of course, Robertson's had a 100-point season. He's had a 40-goal season. He's had some very productive early years of his NHL career. I don't know what a long-term contract is going to cost for him. The belief is that the Stars would likely have some of those conversations with his camp before deciding if they're going to try to extend him or if a trade might be best. The belief was if they traded him, it's likely going to be for cap space. But if they can get the right-hand defenseman that they want with an extension, I can understand why they wouldn't do that. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be a one-for-one deal. I don't think that's the case. I think it would have to be Andersson plus. I mean, I think Andersson's got great value. I think he's a really good, interesting player. But I do think that Dallas would value Robertson even higher. So, he's younger. He's just got such high-end talent that Calgary, now there are reports that, according to Frank, that Calgary would love to get Jason Robertson. Now, I don't know with any kind of certainty that he would sign an extension there. I don't know if he's really that particular, or if he would block a deal by saying, he can't really block a trade because he doesn't have trade protection in his contract. But if he says, I won't extend there, if they, allow them to have that conversation ahead of time, that could be problematic. And we haven't really heard much about that. All we've heard is that Dallas was really considering moving Robertson, but they really wanted to figure out what an extension looked like first, just to make sure that long-term it was the best move, or is signing him the better move. But obviously after they acquired Rantanen, it's just raised a lot of question marks if they can afford to keep both on a longer-term basis. So we will see. Like I said, it makes sense for both sides. I don't think it would be one-for-one, but definitely a trade that very well could materialize. Now in Vancouver, some interesting remarks from Jeff Marek is going to get people looking at some center options. We know that that's probably the main area that the Canucks are looking to add to if they can before the season starts. Will be down the middle. I know Cam Robertson was on, I think it was Sekeres and Price here recently, just in the last couple of days, saying how he has no doubt that the Canucks, primary concern and thing they want to address right now is adding help down the middle. So Jeff Marek on his program on Through Daily Faceoff had made comments as well about trading for Marco Rossi or Jesperi Kotkaniemi, but also mentioning that he doesn't know that, if either of those trades were to happen, are they going to be the player that you really need to lead your forward group to the next level? Is it going to be more of, mediocrity, so to speak, or is it going to be a difference maker? And he wasn't really sure that there was a difference maker there, which is probably, maybe why Vancouver has been hesitant to make the move. Because we know there's been lots of reports that they've had trade conversations with Minnesota around Rossi. That's for sure. I do believe there were at least some. I'm not sure how deep. I don't know how in-depth it went. I'm going to say probably not very, but we know the Carolina Hurricanes were reportedly exploring a Kotkaniemi trade. There was a lot of speculation that they're going to try to trade him before the buyout window opened, and if that didn't happen, that he would be a prime candidate for a buyout. Considering his age, most buyouts, if you're over the age of 26, it's a 2/3 buyout over twice the period of time. Whereas if you're younger than that, you're still in your RFA years, it's a 1/3 buyout, and he was still in that category. So it would have been a very inexpensive buyout compared to most. And I really thought, as much as they might see some value in the player, I don't think they really like the contract. And if they could get out of it, they would love to do that. Now, like I said, there was some belief that Alvina Rutherford had checked into Kotkaniemi before, and that they did have some conversations. I don't know how deep and how far things went. So, they are looking at both options. We've heard about the Jack Roslovic connection as well. What they end up doing is really difficult to say. But Kotkaniemi is definitely one of the names that they're kind of looking at. I mean, Merrick's brought it up enough times. I know originally the way he brought it up the first time, I don't think a lot of people thought he was kind of super serious, that he was a legit connection to the Canucks. But he's brought it up multiple times and believes that they are... he is a player that they are legit looking at. So we'll see. In Montreal, of course, the Tony Marinaro podcast had an appearance from Eric Engels a few days ago, made some interesting comments about their D-core. Of course, we know with the addition of Noah Dobson, and of course they added Alex Carrier late last year. There's a couple of outsiders come in, and they've had a lot of youth, built up in prospects through their D-core. A lot of internal players there that were looking for full-time roles. Then they end up bringing in a couple of outsiders in to take some of those roles. And now they've, for a while, they've kind of had too many defensemen. So not really a shocking statement by any means, but Engels did say that within the next year, so sometime most likely during the coming season, between Mike Matheson, Arber Xhekaj, and Jaden Struble, that he'd be at least one of them likely not going to be there when next season ends, or when we get to next summer. So, if you look at it, what's the most likely? I think Matheson has the most value. We know they want a number 2 center, and that's kind of their main wish list right now. They might end up going into the season without making a big move, trying to see what they got in Kirby Dach and all that before they kind of make a big deal here. But Matheson probably has the most value. You've got Xhekaj, who's a unique defenseman with the size and toughness. And then you got Struble, who just signed a 2-year contract. Matheson and Xhekaj have 1 year in their contracts, whereas Struble just signed for 2. I don't know. I mean, I've said before, I think Matheson probably isn't in Montreal after this year. Based on their salary cap situation, it makes sense that at least one of them is not going to be back. Matheson also makes the most money. Like I said, has the most value. He's the most senior. There's a lot of things that just make sense. And really, like I said, with his role before was more of a puck mover, power play. They've got Dobson and Hudson. I don't think they really... It's not that they don't need him. It's just that I think his role might become a little redundant, and they might want a different type of D-man. You've got Caden Gooley, who's fully capable of playing that top 4. Obviously, like I said, you've got Dobson, you've got Hudson, you've got Carrier, you got just signed Struble to a 2-year deal. Xhekaj's probably got a spot for now. You traded Logan Mailloux, but it's hard to envision a long-term spot there for Matheson. So I do think he's the most likely to go, but given their tight cap situation, wouldn't be shocking if 2 of them went. In all honesty, I think, like I said, Matheson, to me, he's either traded during the season by the deadline. I think it's probably earlier in the year or before the year is most likely, I think, because Montreal is going to be a team likely in the playoff mix, and they're not going to want to subtract. So if they do trade Matheson, it's going to be for more of a hockey deal. So, another player coming in that can give you immediate help as well. Xhekaj, to me, he kind of played his way into the press box at times last year. And I know that Marty St. Louis definitely had some frustrations with him. So I think it really just boils down to how he does. I mean, I think this is a big year for Xhekaj. He either becomes more consistent with his defensive play, it becomes more reliable out there. I think sometimes he just gets a little bit too caught up trying to throw the big hit, more focused on the fights, and not worried about his defensive play. and positioning and all that. Like that to me, I think is kind of what happened. We know he's a big guy. We know he can lay the big hit. We know he can scrap. That's all good. That's only part of your game. And you can't go out there just thinking about that too much, right? And I think sometimes some players get caught up in it thinking, I got to fight. I got to lay a big hit to impress my coaches, so I stayed in the lineup. And then instead of that, you end up, losing defensive assignments or, getting caught out of position and things like that. And that's what's going to get you out of the lineup, right? So I really think that, in the first probably half of the season, if he's consistent and he can kind of give them some more reliable minutes, then he'll probably play his way into a more comfortable spot, maybe get a contract extension and kind of solidify himself. Or if he kind of plays like last year and ends up frustrating the coach and is in and out of the lineup a lot, that's when it's more likely going to end up resulting in a trade. And then we could see Matheson and Jack possibly both moved, and Struble the more likely one to stay. I mean, I think Struble is probably better suited for the role that they are looking for here to probably be more of a third pair guy. So we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.